Hello everyone! In this video, we'll go over the Vocabulary Workshop Level Blue Unit 7 words. You can follow along at home using your book. Let's get started! The first word is barrier. Barrier is a noun and it is something that blocks the way or an obstacle. So something blocking the way or keeping things out. It can be a real object like a wall or a fence, or it can also be a problem that makes something harder to do. The example sentence says, firefighters often construct a barrier to stop a forest fire. Just like in this picture here, you can see that there is this barrier here around the fire. It's a barrier of mud that's put on the trees. That way the fire can't continue to burn past this line. So we could call that a barrier. Another example of a barrier that is an object is here in this picture. You can see that there is a playground here and there is a road over here. And between the two, there is a fence. So this fence is the barrier that is separating or blocking things from going both ways. Another kind of barrier that's not something physical can be a language barrier. So here, this person might speak English, and then these two people speak a different language. So there is a barrier that is stopping them from communicating. They might have a difficult time speaking with each other because of the language barrier. So we can have barriers that are real physical things, or also problems that makes something harder to be done. The next word is calculate. Calculate is a verb and it means to find out by using mathematics or reasoning, to reckon or estimate. So when you calculate, you are trying to figure something out using math or careful thinking. And you might calculate an exact answer, like the exact number that it's supposed to be, or maybe just estimate, so you're guessing around what that answer should be. The example sentence says, the math teacher asked us to calculate the number of hours we spend on homework each week. So this is kind of an example of something that you might estimate. So maybe I don't know exactly how many hours I spend on homework each week, but if I had to guess, maybe it's around 4 or 5 hours spent on homework each week. So that would be an example of calculating something. I could calculate something like the total cost of snacks that I'm buying in a store. I can calculate how long it will take me to walk home. Scientists often calculate the distance between planets, for example. So anytime that we're trying to find out what a number is, we can calculate it. Our next word is compose. Compose is a verb, and we can use this word in 3 different ways. The first way is to be or make up the parts of, form. And this means that something is made up of different parts, just like water. I can say water is composed of hydrogen and oxygen. These are the things that make up water, the oxygen and the hydrogen. So whenever you're thinking about things that make up something else, you can use this word compose to explain that. Compose can also mean to create or write. For example, before you compose the essay, you might write an outline. So composing can also be writing something like a song, a poem, or an essay. So in this picture here, I can say a musician can compose a song for the school concert. Or for writing something, I could say she will compose a poem about spring. The last way that we can use this word compose is to calm or quiet one's mind. So that means that you are calming yourself down or you're getting control of your feelings. So I could say something like, he took a deep breath to compose himself before speaking. So usually we compose ourselves. We calm ourselves down. We might take a deep breath, and that can help us clear our minds whenever something stressful is happening. So we can use the word compose in these 3 different ways. The next word is considerable. Considerable is an adjective and it means fairly large in size or extent, worthy of attention. So when something is considerable, it's large enough to notice it, or it's important enough that people will pay attention to it. It usually does not mean something is tiny or small, but it can mean there is a good amount of something. The example sentence says, it will take a considerable amount of time to complete the science project. So since considerable means large, you can understand this as saying it will take a lot of time to complete the science project. Not just a little time, but a very large number. Maybe it's a very difficult science project and it might take weeks to complete it. So we can use this word considerable to explain that it will take a very large amount of time. Another example I could use this word for is here. You can see there is an artist's drawing from before and after. So I can say she made considerable progress in art after practicing every day. So maybe this artist practiced a lot and they got much, much better. The amount of better that they became was very large. So that's why we can use the word considerable to explain it. Another example I could say is the storm caused considerable damage to the roof. If you look at this picture, the roof is not just a little bit damaged, it's very, very damaged. So it was a large amount of damage. That's why we can use the word considerable. Or here in this picture, I can say she saved a considerable amount of money for the trip. So it was not just a little bit of money, it was a very large or important amount of money. So when we use this word considerable, since it's an adjective that's describing something, we often have to use it with another word afterwards, such as amount or progress or damage. The next word is deputy. Deputy is a noun, and a deputy is one chosen to help or take the place of another or to act in that person's absence. So what that means is that someone is chosen. So a leader might pick a person to take their place when they are not there. So the deputy will do the job of the person who is usually in charge. And you'll often hear this word used with police or government jobs. It doesn't only have to be used for those situations, but that is just the most common way that it is used. The example says, the sheriff's first act after winning the election was to appoint a deputy. So this sentence is just saying that after the sheriff was chosen as the sheriff, the first thing he did was to find a deputy. So a person who would work underneath him and help whenever he was too busy to do his work. As I mentioned, you might most often hear this word with police settings, so something like a sheriff or other government jobs. So another example would be the deputy principal spoke at the assembly while the principal was away. So remember, there is a principal, and then the person who is under that principal might be the deputy principal, or sometimes called the vice principal. Another example could be the mayor's deputy attended the meeting for her. So the helper of the mayor might go and attend the meeting when the mayor is not able to. And there are many other words that can go together with deputy or many other jobs where there is someone who could be a deputy. Just remember that the job of a deputy is just to take the place of the person who is the leader or the person who is above them whenever that leader cannot do the work for any reason. The next word is industrious. Industrious is an adjective and it means busy, working steadily. So when someone is industrious, they work hard and they stay busy. An industrious person does not like to waste time. They keep working until their job is done. The example says, the crew that gathered to clean up the vacant lot was as industrious as an ant colony. So this sentence is just comparing the people who were cleaning up to an ant colony because ant colonies are always working hard and they never stop. Another example could be here in this picture. I could say the industrious students cleaned the classroom quickly. So they worked hard and they kept working until the classroom was clean. Or I could say bees are industrious insects because they work hard to make honey. Just like ants, bees are insects that are always working towards something. Another example would be, she was industrious and finished all her homework before dinner. So anyone that you want to describe as working hard and getting all their work done, you can use this adjective industrious to describe them. The next word is jolt. Jolt can be used as a verb or as a noun. And as a verb, it means to shake up roughly, to move along in a jerky or bumpy fashion. For example, it was fun to jolt down the dirt road in the wagon. So since a jolt means shaking or moving roughly, you can imagine something like in this video here, where the person is driving a car and they hit a little pothole in the road, and that causes the car to jolt. So I could say the car jolted when the man hit the pothole. We can also use jolt as a noun. It's still a sudden bump or jerk, a shock or surprise. So the meaning is still the same. We're just using it as a noun instead of as a verb. So the example says, we felt a jolt as the Ferris wheel started. So now jolt is the thing that you're feeling, not the action. So going back to this video here, I could say the man hit a pothole and got a jolt. So he got that feeling of a sudden bump or a jerk. Another example here could be, I felt a jolt of surprise when the balloon popped. Or you might say something like, a loud clap of thunder jolted me awake. So again, think about a jolt as something that moves suddenly and roughly, or something that suddenly surprises or shocks you and makes you react, usually by jumping. The next word is loot. Loot is a verb and it means to rob by force or violence, especially during war or time of unrest. The example says, the soldiers were warned not to loot the villages. So here, looting is the action of stealing things, basically. So you're taking things without having permission, and this happens especially when there's something bad happening, like a war or some kind of natural disaster like a flood, or just any time where there is trouble going on in a place. So that's usually when this kind of stealing happens. And we can also use loot as a noun. And in that case, we're talking about the things that are stolen. So loot is valuable things that have been stolen or taken by force. For example, detectives found loot from a dozen robberies. So as a verb, I might say something like, The robbers looted the bank. So they stole things from the bank. As a noun, I could say the robbers carried the loot away in bags. So now I'm talking about the actual items here in this bag, not the action of stealing. I could also make a sentence like, the pirates divided the loot they had stolen from the ship. So these items here are the loot. Or I could make a sentence like, the robbers carried the loot away in their hands. So they're carrying the items that they stole in their hands. So again, we can use it as a verb to talk about the action of stealing, or we can use it as a noun to talk about the actual items that were stolen. And remember, this word is most common when there is a time of war, some disaster, or some trouble going on. Otherwise, we might just use the word steal or theft instead. The next word is rejoice. Rejoice is a verb and it means to feel joy or great delight, to make joyful. The example says, the whole town will rejoice if the team wins the championship. So when people rejoice, they feel or they show great happiness. It's stronger than just being happy because people usually rejoice when something wonderful happens. So I could make another example like, my family rejoiced when our lost dog came home safely. Or maybe the students rejoiced when they heard there would be no homework. Another time people might rejoice is after a difficult time. So I could say, the villagers rejoiced after the long drought finally ended. So anytime that we want to express that we are feeling joyful or very delighted, we can use this word rejoice instead of just saying happy. Remember, this feeling is stronger than just being happy. Our next word is reliable. Reliable is an adjective and it means deserving trust or dependable. When someone or something is reliable, you can trust it. A reliable person does what they promise, and a reliable thing works the way that it should work. The example sentence says, it is not easy to find a reliable babysitter. So this might be true for parents. It's hard to find someone they can trust to watch their children when they are busy. Some other examples could be, she is a reliable friend who keeps her promises. So if you have a friend who always keeps her promises and always does what she says she will do, then she can be described as being reliable. Another reliable thing might be something like a flashlight. I could say a reliable flashlight is important during a blackout. If all of the lights suddenly go out because of a storm, it's very important to have a flashlight that will actually work. So it should be reliable. I could also say here, the old car is still reliable and starts every morning. So even though it's old, the owner of this car can trust that it will always start and it will always take him where he needs to go. I could also say here, you should go hiking with someone reliable in case you get into any dangerous situations. Because when you're with someone who is reliable, you know that that person will help you whenever you get in some trouble. The next word is senseless. Senseless is an adjective and it means lacking meaning, stupid or foolish, without use of the senses. So senseless can mean something foolish or something that's done without a good reason. It can also mean that someone can't feel, hear, see, or think clearly, such as when they're knocked out during a fight. Just like in the example sentence, which says, the boxer was knocked senseless by the blow. So just like in this picture here, these two men were fighting in a boxing match and this man was knocked out. So he lost his senses. Maybe he couldn't see anymore. He couldn't think clearly anymore. So we can say he was knocked senseless. A lot of the times we'll use this word to explain that something is done in a very foolish or not smart way. For example, I can say, breaking the toy on purpose was a senseless thing to do. There's no reason why you would break a toy for no reason. Or I could say, throwing away perfectly good food seemed senseless. Even if you don't want to eat this food, you could save it for later or give it to someone else. So simply throwing it away is a senseless act. It doesn't make sense. It's a little bit foolish. Another example would be, it would be senseless to run into the street without looking. That's not a smart thing to do, so we can describe it as senseless. The final word is shrivel. Shrivel is a verb and it means to shrink and wrinkle, especially from heat, cold, or dryness. So when something shrivels, it gets smaller, wrinkled, or it dries out. And this often happens because of it being too hot or too cold or just something not having enough water. The example says, exposed skin will shrivel in the frosty air. One common time when our skin shrivels is after we spend a lot of time in the water. So I could say, my fingers shrivel after staying in the bath for too long. Or another thing that commonly shrivels is grapes, because when grapes shrivels, they turn into raisins. So I could say the grapes began to shrivel after sitting in the sun. Or also when food is getting rotten, it might start to shrivel. So I could say the old apple started to shrivel on the counter. One common time that we use this word shrivel is when we talk about plants that are kind of falling over like this. So I can say, without water, the plant's leaves will shrivel and turn brown. So you can see that they are starting to wrinkle and get smaller, get dried up. So any of these situations, we can use the word shrivel to describe this action of something shrinking and getting more wrinkled. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye!